Ablat Gemara. Today's daf is daf Yud Ches. We're actually up to we're up to in the middle of the page, and we're continuing the story of Hanina ben Trajan, how he was makuk, he was barabim, he gave shiurim in public, he defied the orders of the king, and he was in prison for that. And they decided to burn him because he openly professed that he did it because that's what the Eibusher wants him to do. So the Gemara continues. We are up to now. But 3 lines above the middle lines. And this is a story that took place with Hanina prior to him being arrested. Says the Gemara, when Rabbi Yosi ben Kisma was sick, Rabbi Hanina ben Trajan levakar. Hanina ben Trajan went to visit him. Amalai said to him, Hanina, my brother, don't you know that if this nation was appointed to run from the Shamayim because they destroyed the base of Mikdash? Obviously, they were given license and they were sanctioned. The Romans, they were sanctioned by the Eibishter, and Shechriva's base of the surface, they're the ones that destroyed the base of Mikdash, which obviously means the Eibishter allowed it to happen. The Hargis Chassidav, they killed out the righteous people. The Tuva of the best people were wiped out. But dying he kayemes, and this kingdom is still existing, which means that the Eibishter, for whatever reason, is sanctioning what they're doing. And I heard about you, you're sitting there learning Torah, and you're defying openly. It's one thing to do this discreetly. You're brazenly defying you're putting your life in danger. The Sefer Torah you have a Sefer Torah in your bosom all the time. So how can you do that? Now 3 Avedas you're supposed to be Moshe Nefesh for, but this is not one of them. Amalai said, you know what? The Eibishter will take care of me. Amalai said, well, this is amazing stuff. I'm telling you, things which are rational, that fit in with the Torah as well. You don't have to be Moshe Nefesh for this. And you tell me that Moshe the Eibusher will help him. What is that? Tomani, and then he concluded, which is sad that he said this, that your end will be that they are going to destroy you and burn you for what you're doing out there in public. Rebbe, he said to him, he didn't answer him, he said to him, Rebbe. So he called him his Rebbe. Tell me, what's my future? Will I get Olam Haba or not? No, but according to you, Rabbi Hanina ben Trajan is asking Rabbi Yosi ben Kisma, according to you, that I'm doing the wrong thing for learning Torah. According to me, the fact I'm learning Torah, but I'm doing the right thing, so that's Gan Eden straight away. But you're saying that I might be doing the wrong thing, so tell me, am I going to get Olam Haba? Regardless, I'm not going to stop learning Torah. But am I going to get Olam Haba? I'm like, tell me about your activities. And he didn't mention in his activities that he's teaching Torah Barabim, because according to Rabbi Yosi Kisser, it's the wrong thing to do. You're putting your life in danger. Amalai, I'll tell you what we learned yesterday in the Gemara. Moy shall put him. This chalfully b'moy shall tzedakah. We had 3 opinions yesterday. I won't go through them again. But basically, what happened was that we'll just go through one of the opinions. Rashi here brings the second opinion that he gave yesterday, not the first one. So he said, I'll tell you what this opinion of Rashi here is. He said, I set aside money for my Sudas Purim, and by mistake, it got mixed up with tzedakah money. I distributed it to the poor. And and I never took the money back. Excuse me. And I distributed to the poor. For that, I wish my portion of Gan will be equal to yours. My lot should be like your lot. So the Torah that you taught Barabim, according to Kisma, is the wrong thing to do. Yeah, you're not going to have that. But the tzedakah you did, that is an amazing thing. No. By mistake, my own money ended up in tzedakah money, and I distributed to the poor. So by right, I couldn't take my money back. I put in $100 by mistake. I set aside my Purim money. I put it in this, and I couldn't take it back. And I said, you know what? It's already tzedakah. I'm going to leave it there as well. Even though I couldn't afford it, I left it there as well. So that Taisha doesn't like it. Taisha yesterday's more doesn't like it because he says so. The ikar chashem sefer. So the ikar was not that he gave it to the poor. The ikar was I didn't take the money back. So he should have said, and I did not take the money back. So Taisha learned therefore no, but Shas he gave it to the poor. He already knew that it was his own money, but because he committed it, he continued giving it out, and that's the greatest part of it. Anyway, and then a short time went by. Actually, Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma died. He passed away. On the one hand, here the hypocrisy of the Romans. We're at Yuchesam and Allah, the first wide line. He's the hypocrisy of the Romans. So Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma, they all gave him due respect. Yeah, a rabbi, you got to give cover to. Now, what's the gedula of Yossi ben Kisma? There's a Talmud Chacham. Then you want to learn. These Pidu has begodled, they made eulogies. Uve Chazarasan, by the way back from the funeral, Matsu'ul Chanina Betradian, so Yosef Toide Makis Rabbi. Okay, this is odd. Why wasn't he at the Levaya? It seemed that when they came back from the Levaya, he already was sitting giving shiurim in public. Anyway, we actually had the Merk Sudus that you go to Levaya up to 600,000 people. It was a Talmud Chacham. Anyway, with Sefer Torah Munua Bechekei, he had a Sefer Torah in his bosom, exactly what he said. They took him, the Karchu B'Sefer Torah, and they wound him up, wrapped around Sefer Torah. The Kivua B'Chabiles Mudas, they wrapped around with twigs. The rishus, the cruelness. Here they're going, giving us Speidim Yechim Kisma about Talmud Chacham he is, and then a minute later they're gonna destroy the next Talmud Chacham. The Yitzitzu Ben Zaur, they lit the fire. The Hevi Sfugin Shal Tzemeh, they brought these sponges and these shmatas, wet shmatas of wool. We showed them b'mayim, they soaked it in water. V'nicham al liboy. So that what it does is it sort of resists the fire, so it prolongs the fire. The one that prolongs agony. So it should take in the shmasa meheda, should not pass away straight away. Imagine the cruelty here. One thing to kill the person, another thing is to give him tzar. Yeah, but this is more than that. This is cruelty. Amrullah bitay Abchanina Betradi's daughter said to him, Abba, erecha bekach, I'm seeing you this way. This is your lot. Amala ilmole anina srapti levadi. If I was the only one who was being burnt, it would have been very difficult. Whoever will demand the shame of the Torah, who yivakash alvani will also demand retribution for killing me. Amrullah Tamid of the students said to him, Rebbe, Ma Taroya, what are you seeing now? Like they asked what are you seeing right now the last minute? Amrullah, he said the famous words. He said, that I see is Gilyon Nisrafin. I see that the parchment is getting you know Givili Nisrafin. The Oisi is Parchas Ba'avir, and the letters are flying in the air. Though they can kill the Gashmis, but they cannot kill the spirit. So they said to Tamil, said to him, Psach Picha, open your mouth, V'tichones b'choesh, let the fire enter you, and you'll die quickly. Why do you have to stand in pain? And he said to them, Mutiv sheyetlena misha nosna. Let the Eibishter snuff me out. I'm not going to do it to myself. Yeah, and I'll come back to you this because it's very important how Lachas big argument about this. We'll see in a minute. So Kasturaini, the executioner said to him, Rebbe, there's no spooky September. If I increase the fire and I take away those wet sponges or those wet towels, I'll leave it in your heart. So in other words, you'll die a lot quicker. Will you guarantee that I'll go to Gan Eden because I'm going to mitigate your tsar? Yes. You can do it for me. I'm not going to do it, but you can do it. He shovely swear. Miyad hibe b'shaleves v'nokl sfugin shel tzemeh mali, but he did both. He increased the fire, took away the wet shmatas. The yotzin ishmasim meheda, and he passed away very quickly. Af hu kofet v'novadech and this guy jumped into the fire. A few days ago, we had a similar story, but over there, the guy mauled himself. He defended the Eden, and then they're going to kill him. So he circumcised himself right before so he became a gate. He was defending the Eden there to the king. The king said, you won the argument, but the law is you can't win the argument against the king. But he mal. Here, this guy didn't have a chance to mal himself. He just jumped in. We'll go to Haba. Rebbe cried. Same thing he had yesterday, mother, and I gave the hope shot to there why Rebbe cried, but won't go through it again. But he said, yes, some people take a short time, people a long time. Now, there's a big machlekes rishonim. Is a person, three averis are hard to go yavin. Is a person allowed to kill himself? Are you allowed to commit suicide, knowing that if the goyim get a hold of you, they're going to punish you and torture you? You're going to relent. You can do that later. So das gain about cases and in Parshas Noach on the posuk Achaz Dimcha. Fascinating das gain. You should look up if you have a chance. He brings two opinions there. He brings an opinion that one opinion says Mikan He brings a Yerushalmi, won't go to the Yerushalmi, but he says you're allowed to shecht your children if you believe that your children will become Avodah Zarah Shasa Shmad and they won't be able to withstand it. You can shecht them, and it's not considered ach. What says ach is a meat. Then in certain cases you're allowed to commit suicide if you're going to make sure they don't do avedis. And he says, and the raya they bring, he doesn't bring it there. The other bring is from those girls that jumped off the ship and getting from the Zion base. They all jumped off the ship, and then the boys followed. Then he brings that others disagree totally and say it's committing suicide. They don't get kavura, they get nothing, and don't bring an eye from the girls there. Who said they did the right thing? No one doesn't say they did the right thing. This is just telling a mice what happened to the extent of the Churban Beis Hamikdash and how it affected so many others. Then he says there's a mice of two rabbanim in a city. One Rav went around and shechting every kid because it was because of the Crusades. Went around or some Shavsa Shmad before the Crusades. Went around shechting every kid in that city. And another Rav came along and said, "You're a Retzeach, you're a murderer." And the first Rav refused to listen. He continued. Anyone under a certain age, he shechted. So the second Rav said, "If I'm right, then you should die in Misa Mishuna." The next day, the Goyim took that other rabbi, the first rabbi. They took his skin off. They put sand between his flesh and his blood or something. It was the most painful kind of death. But immediately after that, the Gezeda stopped. So the second rabbi concluded, you see how kind of butcher he is? The second Gezeda stopped. And how many of these kids could have survived? Because of him, they're now dead. Those who defended the first rabbi said, the reason why the Gezeda stopped is because he was the kapara. He was such a tzaddik that he was the kapara for everything else, and therefore the future, nobody died. Okay, so and interesting, the Bes Yosef brings this down in Bes Yosef al Tur, but not in the name of Daskein Baltais. It brings it in the name of the Orchos Chaim. The big machlekes. You look in Taisus here. The Taisus in Avodah Zarah is not Taisus. It's a Bein Peri. It's a different Taisus altogether. So the Rishonim, some Rishonim even have these Taisus. They have different ones. So the Ritva says and this one right here. Then the Gillian HaTaisus says the following, but you look in the Gillian the Ritva quotes and our Taisus is very different. One word changes everything around. Let's do the Taisus inside, and I'll show you what the Ritva says here. What if Chanim tried to say, I'm not opening my mouth because that's going to bring, I'm killing myself. So Rabbi Chanim is saying clearly that you're not allowed to do that. Now, it could be that he knew that he could withstand the tzad and the pain like Rabbi Akiva. It says in Sfarim, in the Shainim, one of the Shainim says that if a person is dying on Kiddush Hashem, he doesn't feel the pain. Because the mitzvah takes away the pain. So mainly he wasn't scared that he's going to now what? What's he going to do? He's not going to change his ways. So therefore he wasn't scared and he had no right then to kill himself. Yeah, because you put your life in danger. But look what Rabbeinu Tam says. The heicha, in any situation, you're scared that Goyim will go ahead and cause you to do an Aveda. Now, interesting. It doesn't say Avodah Zarah, the three Avedas. You're going to make each reif. Any Aveda. So it appears. Which is a big chiddush. Kegoyin ayidei yisurin, torture. And you know that you cannot withstand, like Hanan and Meshor Bazar, Yilmola, no dua, they would have get whipped, they would have fallen down. Then now, let me quote you the Ritva. The Ritva says that he saw Taisus, and his Taisus says, Ozu mutter l'chabel atzmai. Look what Taisus says here. Ozu mitzvah l'chabel atzmai. It's a mitzvah to commit suicide. That what they did was the right thing, and it's a mitzvah. No one says it's a mitzvah. No one. Except our Taisus right here. How do you know that? I don't know. I don't say that. But he's the only one. The Ritva, when he quotes Rabbeinu Tam, says mutter. Big machlekes to show him. You know the famous story. There's these the Beis Yaakov girls in 1937. They found out that the Nazis in Yimach Shemam were going to arrest them all, and they were going to be abused. So 93 girls and teachers, and they all sat down there and they took poison. They all died. They all committed suicide. And there's a famous song written about it. There's plays made about it in Beis Yaakov schools, where they all, and what they did was a big mitzvah, and the Shevet HaLevi writes how wonderful it is, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, how noble it is. Sorry, wrong word. How noble it is, everything else. And in the last few years, they came out with a whole thing that the story never happened. Very controversial now, whether it ever happened or not. But that was the story that we all grew up with, that they all committed suicide. But go over the years, you look at the Rishonim, you'll see there's a big machlekes whether you're allowed to, you're not allowed to. There's a mashal in Baba Kama in Hachovel, where he comes out very strongly that you're not allowed to. But there's another mashal somewhere, which I don't remember where it is, where he said there's a difference between you're not allowed to kill yourself and something that's mamash al you're not allowed to. Because why? Because he said, how do you know now that you won't be able to withstand the tzad? Maybe you will be able to withstand the tzad. It's a suffix. So what right do you have to commit suicide because you don't think you can withstand the torture? How do you know? Something versus a vaday. There's a vaday tzayach and something that. But then he says somewhere else, but you're allowed to lock yourself in a house and burn the house down because it's not direct. And we know that one of the Baltesa and Rabbi Yehuda took his wife and his kids and everything else, and they burnt the house down and they all passed away. You know, in New York where they all died, you know, so many places, unfortunately, where they all went in and they, the Chon of Asman went back from America to be with Talmidim, knowing that the Nazis in Machshemon what they're doing, and he said, I have to be with my Talmidim, and he got up there and he said, you always make a bracha, Kiddush Hashem, despite the fact that you put yourself into that situation. Again, you didn't do it directly, you had someone else. The guy can do it, but not himself. And therefore, the Marayi for Shalom Melech also may be a little bit different because Shol didn't do it himself. He had this nar over there. Go do it for me. You know, kill me. So maybe it's no Rai from there. Or maybe Shalom Melech was different because he was the king, is Kavachil Hashem, but the king is slaughtered by Goyim and so on. Then there's another one of the Rishonim that says that if they'll kill you, they'll kill other Eden as well, then you're allowed to kill yourself to save lives. So that's killing. You're not allowed to give over a yid. You're not allowed to give over a yid to save others. But if you are doing it to yourself to save others, then you're allowed to. Then there's a whole big, Shvus Yaakov. I just finished with this. The Shvus Yaakov has a whole discussion about a woman who offered herself up to this head of these bandits to save hundreds of yidden because she then became whatever. She was abused by him, but by doing that, Gila Royas, she saved hundreds of yidden. So you think it's a noble thing, and Shvus Yaakov is a special thing. Yeah. But if you do it to yourself, that's talking about giving someone else over. It doesn't discuss that Yerushalmi if you did it to yourself. Here, giving yourself over, is that a noble thing, or is that committing suicide? So I'm saying Shvus Yaakov talks about, and there's a big machlekes there that many, I think Shvus Yaakov himself comes out against that woman for what she did. Because Gil Arai is one of the three things, in order to, even though she saved so many other. Yet over here, by committing suicide, they say maybe saving other allowed. Yeah, okay. But she did, yeah, true. But that might be different. That might be different. Anyway, so all revolves around this of Chanina ben Tzadin, but Taisa says a mitzvah, which is, I haven't seen anybody quote Taisa's verbatim, but it says a mitzvah. Okay, let's continue about it. Says the talking about Chanim Tzadin's daughter, one ended up in Kubishal Zionis. The other daughter married a mayor. He didn't have much luck with his daughters because there's a mayor's. We'll see in a minute. Sorry, good right. Oh, here. Barte Bruria is the Visame. Bruria was a Talmid Chachama. She taught Tanoim. She quoted in Halach a few times. She was the wife of Rameir and the daughter of Chanim Tzadin. She said to the mayor, Zila by Milsa, the Yos Achtay, because this is terrible. It's a Zila B Milsa, it's a shanda for me, shanda for the family, that my sister is a Zain. Shoko Tarkavas Dinner Ozil. Do me a favor, save her. So he took a lump of dirt and he went. Somebody said, Eloy is Avid Bo Isura. Sorry, she took money. He took a whole bunch of money with him, and he went. He took target three. That's 3 kavim of dinim. Is a lot of money. And he went and he said to him like this: if no aveda happened, Miss Abanisa, unless will happen, I'll save her. But the of the yisuda lays Abanisa. Nisim do not happen when it's nisa. There's a beautiful. Can't remember who said this. There's a beautiful word to explain the famous question of Hanukkah. What was the nest the first night? They found a jug of oil. What was the nest? Right? It's only 7 nights. But the Siyas's question, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of answers. So somebody answered a beautiful thing. The Tosfos asked the question: how did they use the oil? It was what do you call it? It might have been touched by a goy, and we have a Gzeda de Rabbanon that if a goy shakes it, there's Zavim and it's Tameh. How did they use it? So he said like this. Since the Gemara establishes right here, this is the marker, that if an Isser happened, that's what never happened. So what happened was they all forgot that law. They forgot that there was at the moment there was a war. They forgot that you're not allowed to use that. Maybe it was used by Goyim, maybe it wasn't. They just didn't know. So when the next day a nest happened, they realized then that it couldn't have been touched by a Goy, because if it would have been touched by a Goy, then the nest would never have happened. So the nest was the first night that they forgot the halacha. So the first night the nest was they forgot the halacha, because if they would have remembered the halacha, they wouldn't have used it. It would be no oil at all. So the nest was the first night they forgot the halacha. The second night proved that there was nothing wrong with this oil because the raya nest happened, and that's the story of Hanukkah. Anyway, so Ozel, he went Noken Nafshe. He went and he masqueraded Kechad Parsha, like a horse rider. Amar Hashmeini Li. He said to the daughter of Chanim Matrajan, who obviously didn't recognize him, and he said, "He dressed like a horseman." He said, "Come with me." Amrle Dashtoni. She came with an excuse. "Oh, I'm now menstruating." Amrla Matach, I'll wait. How long does it take you? A few days. I'm ready to wait here in town. Amrla Nefishin too, but there's so many girls prettier than me. What are you waiting for me for? Who am I? Am I nobody? Go to nicer girls. So Meir said, "Amish Mamin love the Suda." She didn't do any Aveda. Called the Asi Amrle. Every single person that comes there, she comes up with this excuse that she's menstruating. He went to her personal guard, and Amr, heaven, I want to buy her. Give her to me. I'm scared. I have to pay a tax. I got to get a record, all the, the goings, the revenues, and how can I? Here's a bucket of money. Half bribe the government. Every time they come and ask for money, just give them over $50 here, and the rest keep. When I use up the money, what do I do then? I'm like, I say the following: the God of Meir will help me. And there's a big argument who that Meir Balanes is. When you say some say it's Madame Rutenberg, some say it's Meir, and why it's called a Meir Balanes is from this Gemara right here, because he said, Meir just say the God of Meir will help, and you'll be helped. Who said that's the guard said, how do I know that it's not just you pick me up? Exactly. Watch this. There were the two vicious dogs that they would bite anybody that they saw. Shakal Kola, he raised his voice to them, he picked up a side, picked up lumber dirt and threw at them, drew their attention. The dogs came in his direction to eat him. Amar, he shouted out, so the man himself shouted out, the God of Meir, answer me. Shavku. They walked away. So he saw that it works. and the Yavale, and he gave him the money. And he saved Beruyah's sister. The king heard about it. Asya Askul Skifa. They took it to hang him. That she was a slave or whatever, and they took him to hang him. Omar, as they were taking him to hang him, he said, Elokad Meir, the God may answer me. And they couldn't. They grabbed a hold of him. We can't hang you. What's going on here? Only my high. What is this? Why can't we hang you on the gallows? Hundreds of thousands of people were hanging on the gallows. He told them the truth. Also, they put out these wanted posters. They put a picture. They made a picture of Meir. How did they get a picture of Meir? I don't know. How did they know what a Meir looked like? Yeah, but when did they see him? He dressed like a horseman when he came there. They had no idea who he was. I don't know. How in the world did they know? Does every person go and have to show an identity card? And they kept, I don't know how it worked. But they didn't know that Meir was a horseman. Remember, his own sister-in-law didn't recognize him. How would a Stammer guy see him for 5 minutes recognize him? Anyway. Oh. Well, maybe you have a picture of it. Use my picture as well. Armory called the and anybody who sees this person who's on this the wanted poster, what is that? Call them Lysi, bring him here. Maybe there was a bounty on his head. One day they saw him. Somebody recognized him. Rot Abasre. They started running after the mayor. Sorry? Yeah, you could as well. That's wrong. Yeah, but in also yeah, but could be a bit means in Yerushalayim itself. There's whatever buildings that were Rome, or it doesn't say the arch. So there's some opening. Maybe they had some some construction. Good question. They chased after him. Rod Mekamai ran away from them. All the Bezoinis. Then he made a dash into a house for prostitutes. Or Ikadam, others say, he saw the goyim cooking things. Chazar, and he saw Tamash Bahar Masabah. He put one finger in the food, but he licked his other finger. In other words, he made it appear that he was not behaving like Rab Meir would have behaved. He walked into a Batir Zaina, or he ate by Bishal Akum. So then they realized this can't be Rab Meir. Rab Meir wouldn't have done this. So they realized Rab Meir was a holy man. Others say a third thing happened. Eliyahu came down here in the form of a Zaina, and they wrapped his hands around Ameya and hugging him as if he was having some relationship there. Amri, they said, these people were running after said, God forbid, have Can you imagine? So they recognized the great Ameya and they were prepared to be master and informed to the government. Anyway, Orak Ameya ran away, fled, and he went to Babel. This is the reason why he fled to Babel. Now, did he pass away in Babel? He go back to it, so I don't know. Now, what happened to Bruria was a very sad story. Bruria was very upset when she heard that the Chachamim say Noshim Daitin Kalus. Because she was a Talmud Chachama. She taught the Amoraim and the Tanoim. She had students there. She was the greatest. And she came Noshim Daitin Kalus. She's very upset. The mayor said to her own husband, said, "You're going to regret what you just said." He got one of his students to go and try to tempt her, and to do znus, and she succumbed. And right before they did that later, he said to her, "I'm a Talmud of Rameya, your husband sent me, and I just want to prove why Noshim died in Kalas." So she went and she committed suicide. A mayor caused his own wife to commit suicide. And the mayor, and interesting, Rashi says that he fled machmas kisufa. Shame. You caused your wife to commit suicide, and your problem was shame. There's more to it than that. No, Rabbi Lezer was a shamuti, not a mayor. I made the halacha and maybe because he said the other way around. He was so smart that nobody. Yes, not a shamuti. You're able to give him a bezer. The mayor was the smartest of them all, too smart. But look at that. And yet in the end of Moradarim, we read stories over there about a mayor, how he was so helpful for Shalom Bayis that he let this woman spit on him all over his face so that she can go back home. He was worried. This is the problem. You always worry about everybody else's Shalom Bayis. You don't sometimes think about your own. But it's such a sad story. But why? Look at the last words of Rashi here. Rashi Vikidamri. And why? She found out what happened here. She committed suicide. The Orak Rameir Machmas Kisufa. Shame. There's more to than just shame. Anyway, sad story. Either way, says the Gemara. Tell me we learned. If somebody goes to a coliseum where they have these fights, gladiators, or they would have these animals fighting. They were a lot of them were Yiddish prisoners. No, but really, what it was is gladiators, as we see men, people, animals fighting people, or people fighting people. Yeah, but against a person, not against each other. That's Spain. Matadors and all that. Okay. Or the Charkam, or he goes to a place where it was circled by the army, and they had inside all kinds of entertainment. You saw these people with all kinds of magic, Buki and Muki and Muli and Baluli and different kinds of magicians and entertainers. Baludi and Sagun had his emotional leitzim. This is all considered emotional leitzim. It's in the post like you shouldn't attend. Your preoccupations be learning Torah. These things lead a person to bittul Torah. Interesting, it says it leads a person. It is bittul Torah. What do you mean leads? While you're watching this entertainment, you're not learning Torah. I'm not sure why it says it leads to bittul Torah. Anyway, but we learned elsewhere, asked a question, it says, you're allowed to go to Tzidin. If you go there, this is an extraordinary Gemara. I remember when I was growing up, there was a Rav who constantly quoted this Gemara. Always. When you're allowed to go to the Colosseum, if you ever see the Colosseum, they let's say a gladiator would fight with this victim, a Yid Nebuch, who he was hardly fed, and he's definitely not skilled to fight. He's not a street fighter. And anyway, the gladiator kills the victim. But what he does is right before he does the final blow, he looks around to see the audience. Do you want me to kill? So thumbs up mean let the guy live, and thumbs down mean kill the guy. And everybody used to jeer and cheer, and 99.9% of the time they would have the thumbs down, as if he needs the approval of the audience. But if you are one yidel, I don't know how many people in the country, 20,000, and you're in the top row, what do you think they put the yidden on? The bottom, the front seats, they put them in the last row. I actually went to a concert recently, and they gave me the very last seat of the concert. I finally got to understand what it means, the last row. You're in the last row, even that would have helped. You're the last row, all the way at top, and you're the only one with your thumb up. But everybody else is a thumb down. You're allowed to go. Why? As a tudvei shreitman. That was what this Rav was saying here. If it really bothers you, who cares if you'll achieve anything or not? You're going there to express the fact that it bothers you, it pains you that a yid is in trouble. So, okay, yeah, but historically, yeah, I know, but historically, it never happened. There's no case in history where the yid was standing there with a thumb up helped the Yiddish victim, unfortunately. Anyway, so you must have because you're trying to help the guy out. You're screaming. You're allowed to go to the circle. You're allowed to go to the thing because the people, you need more Yidden over there so that they can help them to protect themselves from whatever's going on around them. Don't count yourself among the soldiers. Don't count yourself to give any support to the Goyim at all. That they should help, surround this particular city. Tasha spells out, don't be a member of the Goyish army. The evening is chashiv also, but if you are, then it's forbidden. Kasha eating as eating, kasha chagam chagam. One place that you're allowed to, but you're allowed to. Bishlam chagam kasha kam is chashiv kam is chashiv. We said right there, if you're part of the group or not. Ela eating as eating kasha tanoi sakam achlei tanoi. Time we learned. Ein hochli said you're not allowed to go to Moshe Leitzim. It's a terrible event. That itself is a Moshe Leitzim. You're not allowed to go. But the Bach brings another gist of you're witnessing murder. How can you go to an event? It's like which I never understood. The boxing events. Two people are killing each other, banging each other out and everything else, and it's supposed to be a sports event, and everybody's cheering and jeering. I don't understand. It's like such a primitive sport. But Amnasan matir b'nei shnei dvarim. Amnasan allows it for two reasons. Echad b'nei shetzavach u'matzil. You're screaming, and maybe you can help the eat out. The echad b'nei shemeid eidas ishali isasiyah. Now you can come to a bezin and testify. Look, I know exactly. They set up all these butadinim after World War II all over Europe, and they asked everybody, please come and testify whether you saw somebody, a man or a woman, exterminated in the camps, so that they can marry. Rabbi Perlov writes in Hagdama in his Sefer that he was a dayan, and he writes in one of his cases, most of whatever Sefer, he writes in the most difficult things that he had to witness. The most difficult, very difficult, was a case where a woman was told that her husband died, so she remarried, had a child, and then suddenly in 1949, 4 years later, the husband appeared because she was told that everybody in the city would perish. Nobody left. They made that assumption. Her husband somehow or another managed to save himself. Anyway, they were all the business. The first husband, was crying, said, "I don't mind. I understand. I'm 100%." And bottom line is, she's also Lishnei, and the kids are mamzer, and they were trying to find every single heter to help her out. And he got up and he said, it wasn't him who said, someone else said, I think, that we are continuing. It hurt him so much that we're continuing the pain that Yimach Shemam did to the Eden. We're unfortunately are continuing right now. Her suffering didn't end. Now she has no husband, and very sad. Anyway, so this is what you want. You want people to come and to testify that this person. Exactly that. Yeah, very sad. Anyway, let's continue about it. You shouldn't go to Tartar, which like theaters or kakasoyes. You shouldn't go to these kakasoyes or these buildings, because they organize things for Avodah Zarah. Chachamim say if they do. Now, the way that most are trying to learn, according to Meir, in all instances, regardless which this are Ashland, in all instances, even if they don't normally do, we'll assume that they do for Avodah Zarah. So it's always us. And the Chachamim say, not always, but if Mokher Zav and Asnech Shad, because Avodah Zarah, and you're going to be involved in, you might be taking things from Avodah Zarah or giving things from Avodah Zarah. And what Shem is Sham Asam Nevoisha Leitzim. So Moshe Leitzim Sachakol. My Beinai, what's the difference? So according to Taisa, the question is, in the Chachamim, what's the difference of Mokim Shebezavlin or Emezam? Either way, you're not allowed to go. You're not allowed to go to these places. Or according to Rashi Shot, what's the difference of Meir and the Chachamim? They both hold the pearl. It's always us, and the Meir holds always us because of Avodah Zarah. And the Chacham says it's us, or sometimes Avodah Zarah, sometimes because Moshe Leitzim. Then what the chilik is, if you did it, can you have any benefit from what you take from there? Because this is Avodah Zarah, of course not. But if it's Moshe Leitzim, you can. The first page until the passing. The praiseworthy is the person that doesn't go to follow the way of the Shayim, doesn't go the way of sinners, but he doesn't stand there. Moshe Leitzim doesn't sit in the Moshe Leitzim. These people are jesters and waste their time. If he didn't go there, where's he going to stop? If he didn't stop, he's not stopping. Where's he sitting? This is how it works. You start going in that direction, it's so tempting. Say from Lama, you're going to stop. Say from you'll sit. That if you become, you're a wise person, you will be responsible for the time you're wasting over here in Mokum Leitzim. This is why they say you should go to circuses and all of these things, because it's a waste of time. You shouldn't buy love anybody who himself is a misleitzitz and he mocks and everything else. If you're a cynic, a mocker, and sarcasm, you'll suffer. She never said, you'll strengthen my sechem, your torture, your sufferings. Because I ask you, please, a personal favor, please do not leitzitz the loy lesser alaichi yisurim. So you shouldn't have yisurim. Even though he always started with a joke by learning, that's not the same thing as leitzitz. Leitzitz means just sitting there and wasting and whiling your time. So if we had two versions of English, it would be our version of Rabba, but it says something Rabba. Everybody who is a cynic and a mocker and everything else is panos with windows. Remember, it says that Moshach Yadai as maybe she pulls his hand away from those who lights him, he takes his hand away, then you have no bracha. Minimize lights actually none of the end. It says, say somebody deliberate, is arrogant. Late Shmoy is a late, and Oiseb Avodah Zarah. He will go there, but basically the place of Ever, Hashem's anger. What's Ever? What kind of anger? Main Ever, Elohim Gehenna. But if you're angry, that's Gehenna, punishment Gehenna. It says, Yom Ever Hayemahu. That day was the day of anger, and then full of tzadis. And that part is Yom Shoah, and that's where the Shoah comes from, what we know, the Holocaust. Anybody who's arrogant will eventually fall into the clutches of Gehenna. It says, Zayd Yoyin late Shmoy. The Apostle said before, if you're yoyin, if you're arrogant, eventually you'll end up evidence. That day. Anybody who's late is not only you, and before we said you bring suffering to yourself, it's much worse than that. The entire world suffered around you. Remember, it says, after now, you will strengthen the your pain. Here the pasuk is that you will also destroy the nechetza shamat. You will destroy around you. It's tough. It's so tough being a mocker that start off just yourself and pain, and then eventually is annihilation. Adventures annihilation. Don't have a pass. Actually, is praise the person according to some Taptois means theaters. According to Rashi, Taptois means palaces. So what's Medinachatay? That's a person who does not go hunting and gain. And makes very interesting. It says that you shouldn't go and go hunting. The famous place where he was asked a question about each guy owned a large tract of land and he does game hunting. He's allowed to join them. And he said, there's all about tasks if there's a purpose. That's also a purpose. The only problem he has is this is Darkish Alesav. And he does not quote this Gemara here, which I'm surprised. He doesn't talk about here. It says clearly you shouldn't be Kangoin. And Rashi says Kangoin means they're using dogs to hunting. Exactly that. Sport. Yeah, kidnapper. Acrobats, all that. We said the Moshe of the Kagin. There's either kidnapper or he was a hunter. If somebody says kidnapper, they would say kabiyustin. Can you you shouldn't sit there and scheme. You shouldn't say, oh well, since I don't do the bad things, I go to theater, let me sleep away my time. Don't do the negative thing, but do the positive. Don't just waste your time, be a couch potato. Go ahead and learn Torah. I'm gonna shmona b'nei miyas Rashi shalom b'tzad shashoyim. Avram Avinu, this Avram Avinu, shmona b'tzad anshei der Afloga. He did not follow the advice of the people of Afloga because Avram was 52 years old, at the time of the der Afloga. It says, let's go build a city. And nor did I go. That's called a Tasha. They were consulting each other. Let's go build this tower, this edifice. But they didn't follow the way the Chatoim is referring to Shlomo about Midas. He did not try Shlomo. They were terrible people. Shlomo says, Anshis, name Roy, the Chatoim, and Abraham was a part of that either. Moshe lazy, waste his time, will his time late. Shlomo pleased him, and they were in the tradition. Remember, it says, and he could tell you, they felt good. They said this about Shimshon Agibur, he'll entertain us. And that's Asher Isha Hashem Asher Isha. Only praise word the man, well Asher Isha, not the woman. But you don't praise word the women are not praise word they follow the Eibishter. Asher Misha Oisa Tshuva. Do tshuva when you're young and you still have a whole life ahead of you. Not a piece, you're about to pass away, Sunday morning does tshuva. That you can overwhelm, not with a man or a woman. It's talking about they have the strength of Ish, because it says, so Ish is a person of strength of a war. That you want to do the mitzvah not because you want a reward. Right? And it's not we learned. Don't be like avodim that serve your master in order to get a reward. Not to give a reward. In that, which is beautifully. There's B'malach Kalamli, which is the finite level of Oyer of Hashem, and then the Seva Kalamli, the infinite level. He said the finite level, you don't get the full Eibishter, you want to get a very finite level. So he says, when you do mitzvahs, we're connecting to the Seva Kalamli. Right? This is the Rotzen of Hashem, which is the Blikvut. So you should not do mitzvahs Amanas L'Kabel Pras to get portions, to get the level of Oyer, which is only a portion of Hashem, which is only Malach Kalamli. I don't want the portions. If like the Alter says, I want to believe all of Hashem. And that's Pshat Plus. Yeah.